Welcome to Season 10 of How to Start Up, the podcast helping you start, scale your business with advice from entrepreneurs on what to do now, next, or never when scaling your company. This season, we're focusing on all things brand, so you'll hear from a series of amazing entrepreneurs on what they've learnt in their own journeys. Hosted by me, Juliet Fallowfield, founder of the B Corp Certified PR and communications consultancy, Fallowfield & Mason. Our mission is to enable you to own your communications in-house with a long-term view. As defining your mission, vision and purpose statements is a really important step when building a comprehensive brand for your business, I was keen to speak to someone who has not only done this successfully, but recently. Founded in 2019, Create Academy offers beautifully curated video courses, providing unprecedented access to the expertise of today's best designers, makers, gardeners, and chefs, all with a mission to help people build their creative confidence. Having recently evolved Create Academy's original proposition by launching an annual membership offering, Julian shares his advice on how to go about defining your vision and mission and purpose, and also why it's okay that it can change over time. Thank you, Julian, for your time today on How to Start Up. I'm very excited to talk to you about all things vision, mission and purpose. But before we get into that, I'd love it if you could introduce yourself and a bit about the business that you started.
Sure. Thanks for getting me on your brilliant podcast. I'm very pleased to be here. I'm Julian Parmiter and I'm CEO and one of the co-founders at Create Academy, where we're on a mission to help people build their creative confidence. And we do this through beautifully produced video courses.
They are stunning.
Oh, thank you. This incredible kind of access. Really, it's all about the talent, the instructors we work with, incredible designers, makers, gardeners, chefs, and we collaborate them on their courses and really give people through their teaching a kind of a window into the world of these incredible creators, all to help people become more creative and live more creatively fulfilled lives themselves. And so that's all via our platform, createacademy.com, where we want to become the world's leading destination for this kind of creative lifestyle learning.
And I've seen some of your beautiful videos and it's so approachable. I think it's not intimidating at all. I saw one on Instagram this morning that said, curtain making can be intimidating. And I was like, oh my goodness, I've watched my mum make curtains all of my life and it looks like a big job, but she does it. Other people can do it. You can learn how to do it. So why did you start Create Academy?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bit of a story. My background, a bit about me is my background's in TV, television production. And I, way back in the day, studied art history and architecture, then actually went on to study psychology, and I didn't really take it past sort of master's level to practice as a psychologist. Instead, I realized again that I was much more interested in telling people stories than necessarily always listening to them. And for me, filming makers, and as a production company, we were involved really to working with other platforms in this kind of long form format where we could spend time with makers, creators in their studios or running around the streets with street photographers. And there was something about spending time with people in their creative process. They're in their flow. They're, masters doing their thing. And there was something about that, not just as a filmmaker, but also we realized actually this is an incredible way to learn is spending time with people. And can we create something? Can we facilitate that space where people feel like they're really spending time with incredible creators, and within that act of creative flow and in that moment, and we like to film people in their studios or in their homes and actually see their lives rather than remove them and put them in a black box or a studio. And really that access and the time and inspiration that you can get from spending time with people was something that personally I felt I was becoming a better creator, a more inspired photographer or filmmaker through spending time with people. And also realizing that actually if we can help other people to get off the starting blocks, or at least remember the creativity that I think everyone has. My belief is that everyone is creative. We all have that as children. We all play, we all make stuff, and we've all got that kind of drive that somewhere in life it kind of disappears or
Beaten out of us. Yeah.
Beaten out of us, or it's like you need to get serious, you need to think about your career. And that's right, life changes. And yet there's something confidence building of, say, that curtain making. It looks incredibly complex and there are not many curtain makers anymore. It's quite hard to find good curtain
Yeah.
makers. And if you do find one, they're very expensive. Even during the course, and I filmed that, beginning to learn some of the basic skills, you realize, wow, I did that. I did that little pleat, that pencil pleat. That's me. That's my work. And then when that work goes up on the wall and other people say, hey, where did you get your curtains, or who made your curtains? You say, that was me.
Yeah.
It feels good. And that kind of confidence that you can learn in one area, and it could be just your pleat and your sewing skills, you take on into other areas of life to say, well, actually, no, I've set out to do something. I had a vision for it. I achieved it. This is what I made. And this is the sort of thing that I can do. And I think that confidence that you can grow in your pastimes, in your home, and for us, it really is all about home, kitchen and garden, creating at home. But then you take that confidence into other areas of life, into your work life, your family life, your professional life, your career. And really, that's all that we're about, is that kind of creative confidence and then taking that into life.
Well, I love that. And given it takes a lot of decisions to get a company live and launched, and brand is a super important part of that, vision, mission, and purpose is part of your brand. At what point in that decision-making process, pre or post launch, did you really sit down and think about your company's vision and mission and purpose? I say and purpose as an add-on because I know that McKinsey used to talk about vision and mission for the 80s and 90s and noughties. And now if you go on McKinsey's or Bain & Company's website, you'll see purpose there. And purpose is obviously super important today. But yeah, how did you go about it?
It was early on. I think, I think it's easy to get in a bit of a muddle with the kind of mission, vision, purpose, and you read the literature, you speak to people, you start Googling it, and you think, I need these as statements, and these need to be quite distinct things. And this is a very particular process. So it feels quite natural to start with the what. It's very easy to begin to communicate with other people about what you're doing or what you want to do. And I think that's valid. You want to know that behind that, I think you also need to know why you're doing something. And with Create Academy, that why was there quite early. And this idea of helping people build creative confidence, I think, grew out of what was probably a mission statement that could fit on the back of a Post-it note, which was create more, consume less. And that early memo was something that I sketched out during a trip away with the family. We took a year out of school. We homeschooled for a year. We left work, dotted projects around the world to do a bit of voluntary work, a bit of paid work, and then a bit of travel. And during that time, I think as a family, we knew that the times where we felt most fulfilled were the times where we were being more creative. And so this idea of, even just for us as a family, for me personally, how do I in life create more / consume less? And I think over time that the kind of consume less has become more implicit within our values, within our brands. We care for the planet is really important in terms of who we partner with, both the brands and the talent, the kind of subjects that we cover, our areas of interest. And so that's potentially become more baked into our values. But that first kernel of a why, of a mission to create more, to help people to create more, really hasn't gone away. So that for Create Academy was a really key starting point.
And presumably it's kept you super focused. We do a lot of work with our clients on their vision and mission because we know it will help all the decisions. It's not just communications, but coming back to your mission is like, does this fit with our mission? Is this keeping us on the straight and narrow, as it were? Because you can get so distracted when you're starting a business. You don't have any boundaries. Did it help you make those decisions at the beginning?
I think it is, like you say, it's really easy to get set on different tracks, especially as the business grows. You get a better understanding not only of your product, but also of your audience. And you want to be relevant. I think, I'm sure you probably know more about brand than I do, being in PR and communications. I've very much come to this as a founder, as a creator and a storyteller. So for me, that sense of story and having purpose, having your kind of mission, your why baked into that story helps you to keep it on track. Because I think that's a really important anchor. Because the kind of how you tell your story does change over time. Some of the things that you do, the what does change over time as you want to meet your audience, your customers' needs. You introduce a new product, a new service, and so your what changes. And I think those things are inevitable as your team grows, as your market grows, and as your brand grows. But that kernel of truth, that kind of, I think I was chatting to someone the other day, they talked about it almost as your soul, the soul of your business. What's that? And that, for Create Academy, hasn't changed. And I think I think we're talking about brands and really as a way of connecting your business or your idea with your market and your audience. And that connection is relational, it takes empathy. And I think for that empathy to be real rather than just something you've, I don't know, come up with in a business plan and looks convincing, but something that has authenticity, it has some reality to it. You actually do believe in what you're doing. Your mission is, you're true to it. I think for that, it does have to be a kind of authentic mission. It does have to be a real reason that you believe in. And I think if you carry that through, that kind of authenticity with your mission, then everything else you do does make sense. It does fall into place. And I think that's that sort of starting place is not necessarily an easy one to start with your why, but I think it's a really important one, and probably one that I think if I was doing it again, we may have even spent more time trying to define our why rather than just 2 words, create more.
Time, yes, ever the elusive thing. But I think a lot of people have said you've got to be so sure of what you're doing and be so passionate about your idea for your business, whatever it might be, because you will hit those tough days and those dark moments where you're like, I am exhausted. When's it going to get easier? And if you have that, no, this is really important. I have to keep going. I have to keep doing this because, and if you know that, it'll help you. It pulls you out of the weeds.
Yeah, definitely. The dark days, you know what you're doing, you know why you're doing it, but also you've got to bring other people along on your journey with you, your team or your co-founders or your investors, or not necessarily just your audience, although they want to know why is it you do what you do. I think that to be able to articulate that, tell your story, really helps with the whole journey of bringing people along for the ride. Have you heard that Simon Sinek talk? There's a TED talk that he talks about, start with why. And it's a brilliant talk. So he's got this mantra that he keeps repeating through this talk. And he says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And it's a really good talk. And it's probably about 10 years old. And it's really inspiring, even now, even though the sort of world's moved on. But it's around the importance of knowing your why, articulating your why, especially when you think about branding and beginning to articulate your vision and your mission and your purpose.
This also stay on brand, and that's a big statement. But I think when you're marketing yourself, and ultimately businesses are trying to sell something, whether it be a service or a product, for your client to understand what that is, the clearer and more succinct you can be about that, the better, because then they know what problem you're solving for them, and less is more. And someone said to me, just do one thing and do it really well. You'll get distracted. You'll think, oh, I could do this, I could do that, I could do that. Just do one thing at a time. And it's really hard because you're like, you suddenly are boundaryless and you could do 100 other things, but you don't have time, and your client will get confused. And I think someone else said this, is that if you walk into a room with a prospective client saying, I can do 100 things that will solve 100 of your problems, they're not going to believe that you're good at any of them. But if you walk in with one and do it really well, I think it was Paul Whedon, actually, in his episode, it was season 1. Yeah, if you come and go, I'm an expert in this tiny niche, which is a problem that you need help with, they're much more likely to believe you. And you can believe yourself. You have confidence in yourself as well. I've just looked up Bain & Company's statement on this and said a mission statement is a definition of the company's business, who it serves, what it does, its objectives, and its approach to reaching those objectives. So it's much more of a kind of today, now thing. And we talked about that. Well, how did you go about your vision? And just quickly on that, their statement of this is a vision statement is description of desired future state of the company. An effective vision inspires the team, showing them how success will look and feel. So it's much more forward thinking. Have you done some work on that as well with Create?
I think we have, and as soon as you go out to raise money, and we raised money within the first 2 years of the business, having bootstrapped it initially from our production company, which was a great discipline, by the way, to bootstrap and then to go out and look for outside investment. This is the area, as soon as you're at that stage in a business, they don't just want to know what you do and why you do it and who your customers are. It's where do you want to be in the future? And there's probably 2 sides for this. You know, for us in terms of our vision, we know where we want to be. We do want to be the leading destination for all this kind of lifestyle learning at home. And for us, that's as much about numbers as it is for influence as well. We genuinely believe that creativity is a force for good. And the more people that we can bring into our world of creating and creativity, we think the world will be a better place. And so I think vision goes both ways. One is where you want to be as the company, where you see yourself. And also, where do you see the world with your company in that position? And I've heard various founders speak on this, but it's having an imagination of or a vision for, but how's the world going to be different if you do become the kind of company that you want to become? What impact is that going to have? Is that a positive? Is that a negative? Who's going to care? And I think that's a really hard question to ask as you're building your own vision, values, and your mission is who cares? And it's quite helpful in we're three co-founders. We trust each other and we can speak very honestly to each other, but it's also really good to have someone go, who cares? Because you can come up with a great idea and this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to change the world. And I think unless it's got sort of heart and a bit of soul and people are going to care about that, then it's going to struggle to find a place in the world for the long term. So yeah, I think vision works both ways. How do you see yourself, but also how do you see the impact that you can have on the world around you?
A lot of people default to Instagram engagement. It's not. It's the loyalty of your client. It's, do they talk about you with rave reviews to other people? That word of mouth is the best PR you could possibly imagine. 99.9% of the human population are good people. If you're doing something with heart and thought to it, and especially today, we became B Corp certified in September. And it's a really interesting time at the moment. There's only 1,500 B Corps in the UK today, obviously much bigger in the US, and 24 of those are communications companies. And someone said to me at the time, why would you bother becoming B Corp? You're tiny and you're a service-based business. Like, what impact are you going to make? And I was so pleased I could come back and be like, 78% of the UK is SME service-based businesses. And if 78% of the UK did better, we'd all be better off. And it was a real kind of, if I'm going to work this hard, it has to be important. It has to matter. And I love that flip side of like, why are we doing it? Why is our business doing it? But why does our client benefit from it as well? And why would they believe in it? And do you think that sort of maps in vision and purpose are quite intrinsically linked? Because purpose coming through, I just read Bain's.
Yeah, go on. Let's have our definition.
I know. A purpose statement is an explanation of a company's motivations and reasons for being and why it works the way it does. And I think vision and purpose are really closely tied. But what would you say on that?
I think they are. I think, like I said, and Jules, I just called you Jules because I've heard
That's
someone
fine.
else called you Jules on a podcast.
No,
Are you a Jules?
I'm so weird you say that. I was always a Juliet when I was at Chanel and De Beers and the big Bond Street jobs. And since I've become self-employed and work in a co-working place, I'm allowed to wear trainers to work. Everyone calls me Jules. I was like, my work self has now changed quite a lot. My work identity has definitely changed. But yes, Jules is absolutely fine.
Yeah, I think creative industries. When I was training as a psychologist, very much Julian, and now at work, I'm also Jules. So I'd never introduce myself as Jules, but it's there. Anyway, we digress. My sort of basic understanding is that the mission is much more about the what.
Yeah.
What an organization does. The vision is where you want to go. And for me as well, I think how you want to see the world changed by what you do. The purpose is much more around the kind of the why and the motivation, as that Bain statement says. And there is quite a bit of overlap. And I think it's also the what, the where you want to go and the why do link in, but it probably is important to distinguish them. For me particularly, it's this idea that we're often quite defined, and it's quite tempting to define ourselves by what we do. And the what is interesting. You want to know. And with Create Academy, I think early on, it's like we thoughtfully, beautifully produce video courses. And that's what we do because you're in the business of it. So most of your day is taken up with the what. I think as soon as you're going for investment and your future planning, your business planning, forecasting is really important, the where and where you want to get to. So this idea of purpose, I think is often the bit that gets slightly left towards the edges and takes a bit of reflection or takes that away day or that retreat or that challenge, actually, when you are in the weeds, when things are going wrong, to say, why are we doing this? And I think you really want to have that down and probably have that down quite early and to be thinking about it. And I do find it great and interesting hearing about businesses and hearing about brands and hearing about what they do and what they want to become. But it's the why that kind of connects us, I think, emotionally.
It's more human. Yeah. You see the personality behind it.
Absolutely. It's the personality. And with brands that are incredible, brands that are meaningful and have incredible kind of world-shaping presence, it that kind of gets people excited. It's how does this become mine? How am I part of this tribe? And that tribe is not just we all look the same or do the same or want to be the same in the future. There's a kind of a heart and soul of the why, of the purpose that kind of unites it. And I think so. I think the purpose is really important. And probably on from that, we haven't really talked loads about it, but it's the value. What does your purpose in the world actually mean? You've said about becoming B Corp. We would love to become B Corp. And I think even hearing you say as a small business that you've gone down that road, I've sometimes looked at our business and said, we're quite small and have used the same kind of, I guess it's an excuse not to put some of the work in. That's really inspirational. I think even hearing that from you is something that value that you have is baked into your business.
Well, for me, it was very much, I know it's going to be a lot easier to do as a younger company. And the bigger you are, the more work it'll take and the more things you'll have to potentially change. And shifting the Titanic, we're like a little dinghy at the moment. So it's much easier to build. And for me, as a new business owner, starter, founder, whatever, I opened my laptop and registered a business at Companies House the day after redundancy and thought, yeah, I'll give this a go. It was having that third party validation to be like, you are legitimate, you are practicing what you preach, you are validated in this. Because our mission is we enable business owners to own their own PR in-house. And it was getting it down to one breath to be like, this is what we will help you with. And our vision is to make sure, nurture the common understanding that PR is best owned in-house. Agencies have their place, they serve their purpose, but it's a whole different way of working. And for us to demystify this world of PR, I was so passionate about, because I've had a 20-year career in it. So for me, now we need to do the work on the purpose and our values. And it's the purpose is to make sure that people aren't being rinsed by agencies and being charged exorbitant amounts and not getting any results. But I need to spin that in a much more positive way.
Yeah, there's something really empowering about that. There's an empowerment to that. And even just thinking about us owning our own PR in-house, there's something that we own it. It belongs. And I think there's something, anyway, we could riff off that later.
Yeah, it was coming from a place of not anger, but frustration, where people had always criticized my career. Like, oh, you're in PR. Oh, you just go on long lunches. And it was born out of this real determination to fix this problem. And lots of people, but you should take on loads of retainers, you'll make loads more money. I'm like, I would have made my life so much easier had I done that. But it's against our vision. It's against our mission. And it's kept me completely believe it's like, no, I'm doing this for a reason. There's a reason behind this. And that's where we got our B Corp point. So it shouldn't be transactionary, but it is that validation, that B Corp validation has really helped me go, yeah, we are on vision and mission. And we keeps us on the straight and narrow in terms of our client work. And are we questioning our clients? Do they meet our values? Will we say no to that revenue because they're not for us? They don't have the same values as us. So in today, it's 2023, just, we're in December. The world is changing. And I think definitely post-pandemic, businesses want to be better. And that's where B Corp, again, you put people and planet above profit. It really is a good thing to try and do. But the main reason is you'll never work harder than when you start a business. You've got to know why you're doing it. And I love that you've said that. It's fantastic.
I think so. And I think, like you said, it also helps you to know what not to do. And those decisions, they're always going to come up. And it's as much about embracing and going for it with all your passion in the direction you want to go with. But there's always going to be opportunities to do something slightly different, especially when they've got a revenue upside and you want to go for the cash. And I think that those decisions are made much easier when you've got a good firm base to say, actually, let's hold this up. Is this going to be... Is this us? And not only us, I think when you're digging into the why, you're understanding the customer. You talk about clients, we talk about customers, we talk about our community of learners. The more, I think, having a passion, not just for what you're doing, but having a passion for customers, for your audience. How are you meeting their needs? How are you serving them? It's the sort of who cares question again, but how are you staying relevant to your audience, your clients, your customers? And that, I think, is really important part of holding true to your mission and to your vision and to your values, is because you could just go off and do something because you'll get a little bit more revenue. And actually your customers say, well, that's not really what we know you for or what we love you for, or you might think about going somewhere else, and you could potentially lose them. Yeah. And I think that kind of holding heart and holding firm to your original kind of, vision, mission, values, I think that's, it helps to avoid some of that.
And it's not to be, it sounds like we're very do-goodery at the moment, but it's not all about that, because ultimately if you build that foundation and your clients know what you are solving for them, they will then refer you, you'll win future business, your business will grow, you'll have more revenue to make more change and affect more goodness in the world. It does become full circle.
Right. Absolutely. And I'm not saying it's not altruistic, it's to have a strong business. I think have a strong brand, like you said, it's doing the one thing or the few things really well, being known for them, being recognized for them. And so when people see you or see a bit of content or see your brand name or your logo, they think, oh, yeah, that's them. That's what they do. And that's for me, or it's not for me.
I've completely contradicted it because we started launching podcast production for clients last year as well, because we can. Because you do all the messaging, we can do the technical edit. And so me going, you've got to be able to articulate your business in one breath. And we enable businesses to own their PR in-house and podcasting. And it's
And
and someone's, it could just be a separate business. And I was like, oh dear. It makes me laugh because I know I'm not doing it as clear cut as I could, but with time it will become clearer. But it's
yeah.
knowing your mistakes, knowing where you fall down on this as well is really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I sound like I'm some sort of branding expert where I'm really not. I'm not a marketeer and I haven't come to this. I think I think about brands, I think about mission, vision, values really as stories. It's the stories that businesses tell to the world. And I think it does change. And at Creative Academy, we're 4 years old, so we're a baby business. We're just getting going in the world. And it's in terms of sort of future and growth, we know that we want to innovate, which means not always just doing the same thing for the same people. And I think that those are really interesting sort of steps that a business can take. And yes, we can hold all this and say, yeah, don't change your original vision. At the same time, when we look to the future, we say, how do we stay relevant? How do we bring to people what the things that they want and they ask of us and they need? And I
So
think the message does get adapted. The brand does
yeah.
change over time.
And your vision can pull your mission forward. And it's not to say you can't ever rewrite your mission, but I think having it, questioning it, looking at it. And actually, I was going to ask from a practical perspective, what would you advise
Mm.
people to do to get their vision and mission and then purpose down on paper? Have you had any
Mm.
like good advice on how someone could start? Because it can feel overwhelming.
I would love to know. I feel like this is an area where I should be asking you how to approach branding and those initial. I think it's really tricky. And I think there's a lot of noise out there and there's a lot of pressure to feel like you can get it right. And you become a bit of a wordsmith when you're actually faced with it writes your mission statement or your vision statement. And I think that's a really hard place to start to begin to creep it into those fairly, predefined brackets. For me, like I said, I'm drawn to stories. That was my background. And so, yeah, have it written down. Have your, why am I doing this on a piece of paper? Have your, whatever it is, your foundational memo that you may never show anyone. It may just be for you. But I think those early days for us was we talking about it, getting those wise people who are the business people or the friends, the family that you respect, that you admire, who are kind, who are encouraging, and listen to yourself as you're telling your story. Does this resonate? Is this real? Is this true? Is this an idea? What is this? And I think you get that feedback quite early on that then begins to shape that narrative into something that does start to look like a business plan, does start to look like you can separate off, that's what the future will look like. So that's my vision. This is the kind of what I do. So that's a bit more my mission. And this is my purpose here. How can I define that? Why am I doing this? And so I really do think it's a process. And honestly, every time we come to the website, even on that, the kind of really painful about us section, for many years, we had nothing there because we thought we're not very confident with our brands. Let's just have a very pared back brand that our instructors can imprint over. One of my co-founders, Will, is his background's in the music industry. So we lifted a bit more of the kind of record label approach to branding where we had our name and we had some white space and we felt it was the artist that we were signing would speak more loudly about who we are and who our brand wants to be than we could by defining it with a lovely logo, font typography, color scheme, and a vision statement. So we had a sense of what our brand was, but we really let it take shape through the business over those first couple of years. Now we're a little bit more confident saying, actually, no, we do believe these things. And people do ask us, who are you? What do Create Academy believes? What do you stand for? And I think, you can start to speak into that much more confidently as your brand grows.
But you've made a really good point in the sense that it's new to you too. You don't know all the answers on day one. You have to live with it, breathe with it. And as long as you've got the revenue coming in to keep your head above water, you don't need the immediate answer. You can put something down, test it, And someone once said to me, so you have to say your mission statement 100 times to 100 different people. And each time you say it, you'll become more succinct. And I
Yeah.
chuckle now because I meet so many people that we then help them with theirs, that they're like, oh yeah, we do this, we do this. And they go on for 10 minutes. And I was like, no, if you're talking to your grandmother or bus driver, you've lost them. They won't be there
Yeah.
anymore. And it's so fun when you get it really nailed into one breath and you can say it. People go,
Yes.
I know what you mean.
That's the dream. That's the elevator pitch. I don't know if you spent time in New York or the
Oh, yeah.
States, and the elevator pitch is just down. You ask people what they do, it's there. It's ready. It's just like ready to come out. And I think in the UK, sometimes we really struggle with over articulating what we do.
Yeah.
And waffle away. And I can hear myself clanging in certain circles and thinking, no, I just need this in 3 words. What do I do?
Because you're so passionate about it. And I did find my first year, I'd be going out for dinners or see friends or go on dates, and all I'd talk about was work. I was like, no, God, I'm even boring myself. This is ridiculous. I need to get a life.
Wow.
But getting it shorter so you can move on is even another incentive to do it. And not spending too much time and effort on brand at the beginning, because it will change. You're still getting to know it. And don't spend money on a logo at the start.
I think that's right. It's really tempting to splash cash at it and have a sort of an agency or someone else come into the business to shape your band for you. And yet there can only be as good as the way you want to go.
Well, as good as the brief.
As good as the brief, exactly.
And if you can't brief them, they're stuffed. And it's not fair on them, because they're going to come back with something that's complete. And you'll see it and go, no, that's not me, but you still don't know who you are yet.
Yeah. But I think that's a good point there as well, because it goes back to the confidence thing, because creating your brand, it does take a sort of a certain amount of that confidence. And I think having the confidence that it's your idea, it's your business, what you want to bring to the world, either as a company or a service or an individual. And it's on you to begin to articulate. You'll be the best at articulating it. No one else can really do that. I think other people can help you and to ask questions and to draw it out of you. But the idea that you can just pay a fee and someone will come in and give you a world-changing brand you're just not going to get it out of the box like that.
I love you for saying this, because you've validated our business model, because we say the founder is their own best storyteller, and you know your 100%. Business better than anyone else.
There we go. Okay.
You don't know it at the beginning. You don't. For you to seek inspiration when you're now revisiting your vision and your purpose, it sounds like your mission is pretty steadfast and correct. How do you go about that?
It's a really good question. I think it's hard because we're 4 years in, and it is what it's like running a business. You're at the grind, and so you're very much in problem solving. Sometimes I think about why did I get into this? Wasn't I happy as a freelancer? I could do a job and go home at the end of the day. In those low moments,
annual leave.
All that. I think a lot of the time you're just in the grind with execution, and it's a series of problems to be solved is a lot of the reality of founding something and growing something. So I think taking that time out to put your head above the parapet and to look around, I think it really helps when you're not totally alone. I think leading your business, I think having those
2 co-founders.
There's 3 of us. I know. Yeah. Will Dorn, Josh Lee. I think we look at one another when it gets tough and we think, well, thank goodness that we're in this together, because you can't always be on form all the time. But with 3 of us, generally 2 are. And so that I think really helps. But even if you're founding alone or whatever, having those who are the mentors or who's the advisor or even just support, who's the sort of personal support, who's the person that you can rant to, because you can't just go ranting to your team, or you can actually, but it's not always that productive.
You definitely can't to your clients.
And you can't to your clients. Yeah. And I think having those people in place, partly who can tell the story back to you, and I think that's helpful when early days because founders are quite boring to hang out with, because they do just go on about their businesses, and that's sort of part of it, like doctors, And you tell people the story, you tell it, and then you tell it again. And I think having people tell it back to you is really empowering. And so in terms of inspiration, I find, it's probably people. And then I would say place, like you just get out, travel, take that break. It's really tempting not to take any breaks and to work the whole time. And I don't think that's a healthy way to live. I think you can do it for a while. Yeah, you can get it off the ground. You can sweat it out, but eventually it's going to come back to you. And if you don't take a break, probably your body will make you take a break. And
Yeah.
you see that kind of burnout and stuff.
Oh, those physical hand breaks. For me, I'd lost my voice. It's, oh, good. The one thing I need to do my job. And my body was like,
There
you're
it
going to have to
is.
take a break. It's fine. I
Yeah.
admit defeat. I'll have a holiday.
Yeah, you got to listen to that. Yeah. And so I think that's really key. But I think people will find inspiration in different places. I love people's stories. I love makers. Actually, if I'm feeling a bit like, what are we doing? Then I'll put myself on a shoot and I'll be in the room in a studio and I'll watch someone block printing for hours, for example. And that brings sanity back to me.
Yeah.
My brain slows down. I say, oh, yes, this is what we're bringing into the world. This is a beautiful thing.
This is why you're doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think
Yes.
remembering that is really key.
Amazing. Thank you. Something we've started doing with our guests is we have a question from the previous guest, who is Estee Lalonde, who was a social media star and then launched her mirror water brand. And it's all about doing mirror work, self-reflection, self-care, taking that time for yourself. And her question for you was, what really is the dream for your company? And this is the interesting bit to this question. And when do you think, if ever, would you be satisfied with where it is? I.e., would you ever just go, that's enough, I've done enough?
That is a really interesting question. I mean, instantly, what does enough look like? I don't know if you've watched any of this. It's the psychotherapist on Netflix who works with Jonah Hill, and he's this sort of shrink to the stars in LA. It makes me think instantly of him because part of his work is working with super successful people, founders, actors, Hollywood stars, and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Part of his work is to test their bubble, that actually nothing they'll do will ever bring them satisfaction on the outside. So no house, no business, no next film, no financial reward. That stuff just doesn't actually bring you fulfillment. Your fulfillment needs to come from the inside.
Oh, it's on the lines of the more Oscars you win, the more depressed people become. I think I heard something like that. Yeah.
The most successful people in the world, particularly in Hollywood, are actually miserable and they have everything. And so I think it's a really interesting question. I think we have to I have to check myself to thinking, yeah, when I'm at this stage, then I'm going to feel like I've achieved something. I love to think that with Create Academy, I think having that message that creativity not only helps humans on an individual level, but also on a kind of a corporate community togetherness level. And I'd love to feel that message is going, pinging around the world, and everyone understands that, and everyone takes time in their day or their week to create something.
Yeah.
And beautiful. I think I'd feel super satisfied with that.
Fulfill your vision.
I think it's probably, is that fulfilling the vision? When I think about that actually happening, would I be satisfied? I probably would be thinking about the next thing, or what else am I going to do? I already have started the next thing.
Yeah. When you're entrepreneurially minded, you can't help yourself but be annoyingly proactive. And actually, you have to rein it in sometimes. And Jo Fairley, who founded Green and Blacks, she was on the last season. She said, I give my ideas away now. I don't want to do another one.
That. I thought that was brilliant. Yeah.
It's like, someone else do it. Here's a great idea. Go, you have it.
Yeah, you have it. I think that's right. Because these ideas, once you're in it, they do pop up either from you or from your team.
And what would your question be for the next guest?
I was wondering also about the future. I was wondering to ask someone about how they're innovating for the future. It's something that we think about. And obviously there's lots of technological changes and people have various thoughts about those changes. Hey, we've done a whole podcast without mentioning AI, which is amazing, but there it is. I mentioned it. And especially in our space, this sort of education technology space, it's a really big disruptor and potentially a big opportunity, but not necessarily AI. But I just wonder how that person is innovating for the future.
Love it. Thank you very much, Julian. You're a wonderful source of inspiration and creativity. And I think you've given listeners a lot of comfort around the fact that you can do this and it's worth doing the work on it as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for bringing me on. Likewise.
Thank you so much for your time. I really hope you've enjoyed this conversation. You can find a recap of all the advice so kindly shared by a guest in the show notes along with their contact details. We'd love it if you could rate and review or share this podcast because it really does help other people discover it. To incentivize this a little, I would very happily offer you one of our PR guides on how to share editorial coverage legally. Just DM us or send us an email, hello@fallowfieldmason.com with review in the title and we'll share it on.